Hello everyone. It says here on live, and so as always, I'll begin shortly, but for the benefit of those who are watching later on YouTube, as the room fills up, I'll just talk a little bit about what we're doing today. I don't have a song ready for today. Sorry about that, but I think it's okay. We'll improvise a little bit, and we'll talk about music and guitar practice, and how to maximize the effort that we make when we practice, and the different modes of practice that we can use depending on what it is we're trying to achieve with the practice we make. Okay, so this is kind of the deal for today, and as soon as we get some people in, I see there's somebody already coming in, so it shouldn't be too long, then we'll start talking, just so that I don't repeat myself. But the idea is that whatever you practice becomes a part of how you play, right? So practice should be taken very seriously, because I see a lot of players who put in a lot of hours, but after the first initial step, which is when you're a total beginner, you do nothing. So basically anything you do works, because you can only get better, right? Then they get into this loop of never quite improving as much as they want to, because their practice is not effective and it's not even fun, and so they practice a lot, but they're doing the wrong things in the wrong way, and so they put in the hours and they don't progress. So that's the worst thing. So we'll try to shed some light onto how to practice and what to practice, and it's very personal stuff, and as always, this is not a lesson. I haven't prepared this. It will be just a way of talking with you about it, and you can tell me how you do it, and we can have a discussion. All right, so as you are coming in, please say hello, and let me know where you're from, and then we'll get going. Let's see, how do I set this up? Okay, I'm going to I hope I'm not. All right, here it is, so I can see now. All right, so I will be able to see the messages now. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to ask, interrupt as I speak. Yeah, I don't mind. But maybe we'll talk a little bit about how to practice the most asked things that we have, which are usually scales. Scales, people seem to have a hard time sometimes to move from the practice stage. Hello there. Good evening. Good evening to you too. Yeah, welcome to this little chat. And so as I was saying, we'll be talking about how to approach practicing things. And one way, hello Dennis, what kind of exercise can you recommend for left hand? I've been playing for a long time, but I'm stuck and I feel like going nowhere. All right, so before we get to that specific about the left hand, we can talk a little bit about how we practice, but the most important thing is that when you choose what to practice, which is actually makes your question very good, because you have a problem you've identified, which is trouble with your left hand, and you're looking for a solution. Now that's the right way to go about practicing. The wrong way is to say, well, everybody practices scales, so I'm going to practice scales, or I'm going to practice technique, or I'm going to practice chords, and they're all very good and valid points when taken by themselves, but unless you have a method and an objective, then they're not really helpful. So we can start with your question. It's fine, because it's very specific. So if you do have a specific problem, an area of trouble with the guitar, then it's a bit easier to find a good way to practice. But you say you have trouble with your left hand, right? I would even go a bit more specific and ask you what exactly is the problem with your left hand, right? Because there are many techniques, almost all techniques actually, unless you're just doing wee wee with the whammy bar, that involve the left hand. So you might want to pinpoint the problem area, right? It could be the third finger, which seems to be a bit of a problem for a lot of people. It could be coordination, like for example, you're playing at a certain speed, but not all fingers follow at the same speed. It could be strength for legato and stuff like that. So if you can give me more specific information, I will probably be able to help you out better. But this is already quite a bit of help if you haven't really thought about it this way. So it's not enough to say I have problems with the left hand. Try to be as specific as possible, because when you have to put 1 or 2 or 3 or 50 hours of work into something, it's better to know exactly why you're doing it, just to keep your mental sanity, but also because you can do the work in 10 hours that otherwise it would take you 1,000 to do if you don't have a clear direction. And I know from experience. So I think I do more technical practice, musical practice. So Berto, we will get, oh, hello Danielle. So you guys are, yeah, the room is filling up. So it's good to see you all. And so we'll talk about the musical stuff, exactly, because that's one of the most important things. But in general, as I was trying to figure out what exactly was, what was your name? I'm sorry. Dennis, I don't know exactly what your problem is with the left hand, but let's assume you have trouble with the strength. Oh, here we are. I cannot play fast some legato licks, and my hand is tension and it gets tired. All right, good. That's good. So a bad teacher would tell you just relax when you play, right? And you know that doesn't help. So let's imagine that you have trouble with a certain figure, right? I'm going to make this up, but it doesn't matter because you can apply it to anything. If you get tired all the time, again, narrow it down. So maybe find a song that you play that makes your hand tired and focus on that part where it hurts or where you get tired the most. So let's say it's a little simple thing like that, just a very simple lick, which hopefully is not in any song because it sounds like an exercise, but I'm just doing 759 on all the strings, right? On groups of 3, which is a pretty simple thing to do. So you can all practice. And I realized that, for example, at this speed I can play, but I'm already starting to lose focus on the notes. I can control the dynamics, I can control the volumes and all that. So instead of practicing at this speed, just because you can fit it into the metronome tempo you set, because that's a big mistake. Just playing slow won't make it better. Playing at the right speed will make you better. So the right speed here, I would say, is a speed where you can get exactly the kind of sound you want, except for speed, right? So you want to visualize what you want to hear. See, I don't like that 4th string. I would probably let it go, let it pass, if I hadn't this clear idea in my head of what I wanted to sound like. But I know exactly what I want it to sound like. This is what I want to hear. I want to hear all the notes and all the strings the same. So this probably is the right speed for me. You see, so we've narrowed it down to exactly what it is I don't like about what I play and exactly how I can fix it. That the speed is not play slow. It's not play slower. It's not play more. It's just play at the right speed with the right circumstances to improve it. Okay, so that's the first thing. Now, the big problem for you is tension. So we can be a bit extreme with this and say, okay, how fast do you have to play to feel tension? And I would start backwards, so I don't build the tension already before even starting the exercise, because otherwise you start already tired and then you will know how to get around to it. So let's go very slow on the string that's easiest, so probably the 3rd string because it's in the middle of the neck, and I will go like this. And then slowly do more serious, right? So I look at this speed and I'm like, okay, do I feel tension here? I don't. Well, then I go up with the metronome. No, I'm still good. Still good. Now maybe here you start feeling something. So go back again. Now, can you feel that tension at the lower speed now that you know what it feels like? You know what I mean? You notice it maybe at 120. And then you say, okay, I'm not going to work at 120. I'm going to go back to 90 or something like that and see if I can feel the seed of the tension that's already starting to build up. But I wouldn't notice it if I hadn't heard it or felt it at a higher speed. And maybe you can even hear it at this speed now. Right now, so now when it's in its infancy, you're not dealing with a big problem, you're dealing with a small problem because you actually hadn't even noticed it before. And so what you do at this speed that's comfortable, you go like, well, now can I localize the tension? Is it a tension that's all over the hand? It probably feels all over the hand when you go like this. But is it, now that I notice it in its infancy, is it is it sprouting from a small area? And so maybe you can identify the finger. You see what I mean? And then you can either keep working on it, but with your mind set to that problem, or you could even make up an exercise that takes care of that tension at that specific spot. So maybe you could go like, if the problem finger was the second finger, you could just do this and practice your legatos. Now, this is not a waste of time. It seems like a step backwards for doing this, but it's not a waste of time, because this is the improvement that will let you play anything after today that has to do with legato, with second finger, and so on. You see what I mean? I hope this makes sense. And I just made up a little exercise, but you can apply to anything. You can apply to a song you like. You can apply to anything at all. All right. So that's one way to look at it. And Daniel from Peru. Oh, hello. How are you guys doing in Peru? I hope your quarantine is good. You know, that you can play guitar. How is the situation in Peru? Is it calm? You guys are cool? And then we have Daniel from Italy. Hello. And then Alberto says that he does more technical practice than musical practice. Okay, so that's one other thing that's really important. One question, as you saw from the title of the chat today, is what and how to practice. But the why is maybe the most important question, and I've left it out because you can practice anything. So the what can be a scale, it can be a song, it can be a chord, it can be a chord progression, it can be a theory, right? The why, the how is a good method for practicing, which is really important. And we should all develop, and we talk about methods, we did a little bit today with this exercise, but we'll do a lot more. We'll talk about modes and how to practice scales. That's my idea at least. But the why is the most important thing, because if you're practicing only the technique and technical aspects, then you have to wonder why you're doing it, right? Because probably you will not be able to write good songs if that's what you want, or you won't be able to improvise interesting musical ideas if all you focus on is technique. Because if you spend 10 hours practicing technique, those 10 hours contribute to the way you play, right? What you practice, you play. So it's really important to focus on what it is you want to become and then practice towards it. So if you want to be a technician, only a technician, maybe for example, you could, do, I don't know, like YouTube videos playing the Flight of the Bumblebee at 300 BPMs, then technique is all you need. But otherwise, if that's not your goal and that's not your projection, of yourself, then you probably should practice musical ideas. And we'll talk a little bit about it today. And as a matter of fact, this is a good time. So one way to fix it is, and this is what I do personally, every time I study something, anything at all, is I make a musical idea out of it. All right. So for example, if I study a chord, just a simple chord, doesn't matter, like a very easy chord, I can study an A minor. And I go like, okay, what am I going to do with this? And so the first thing I do is, if it's a chord I study, it doesn't happen that often now, but it certainly did before. I play a new chord, and as soon as I play, I record it in a loop, a long loop, and I just start playing on top of it. And if I don't know scales, if I haven't practiced scales, I just play by ear. But I need to turn this event, which is just a little snippet of knowledge, I have to turn it into music. Right? Because it's pretty hard, you might say. Well, it is hard, but it's a lot harder if you study 100 things and then you have to apply music to all hundreds of them, right? So anything you do, a new scale, maybe somebody taught you the Dorian scale, right? We'll talk about that actually. So you have your Dorian scale and you go like, well, this is great. I practice all 5 positions, 12 positions, 7 positions, whatever you want, play them all on one string. But that's not going to help you, is it? And if somebody has just learned one position and they've been making music with it, then that's what you want to actually hear. So it's very important that everything you study at an early stage you apply to musically. It doesn't have to be the greatest composition or improvisation of the world, of the history of music. It just has to be an interface between your mind and your ear and what you study. So as soon as I study an interval, all right, I like this sixth. Now if I know my major scale, or if I'm actually in C, sorry, I'm making up a scale there. Now, can I apply to more strings? Right? Can I do that? Great. I can't? Well, I just stay on two strings. Before I studied on all strings, you know what I mean? I just reduce it to the minimum possible to make music with. And it applies to rhythms. What if you just learn a new rhythm, then you make music with a simple chord? Very different from... So this string has been giving me problems. We'll see if it holds. All right, so that's another little bit of advice. Peru, Daniel, let's see. Don't have work and don't make any money. The quarantine is bad for some people, but the worst is that the people still go out to find something to eat. Well, that's terrible. I'm sorry to hear that. And thanks for sharing. And thanks for the classes. Well, you're very welcome. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And, I'll do my best. But yeah, are these triads? These that I just played, no, these are just sixths. They're just two notes. I'm playing a C major scale. And all I do is take, for example, if you take C major, you go the sixth of C, which is A, then you go the sixth of D, which is B, the sixth of E, it's C, the sixth of it's on F, and so on. And then you can just actually play the whole scale against its interval. I'm gonna move to another string because this string is having problems, right? So I'm following the major scale of C, but using always that harmonization. I'm always playing the notes paired to their own sixths, you see? And if you want to look at it another way, it's a little simpler. I'm playing C major on this string. And then I'm playing, let me lower the camera. And then I'm playing the same thing on the third string, but starting from A, which is the sixth of C. But I'm still playing C major. This is a C major scale, right? But now combine C with the A, the D with the B, and so on, you see? So I'm playing. Now if you know more, then you can actually mix them. Oh, sorry. With the sixth from another pair of strings. I can talk and do this at the same time. Now I found something to practice, right? This is all the same scale, but always playing every note against its own sixth. And you can do it with all intervals. You can do it with thirds. Takes a long time to practice all this. And then you have to do it with every key, right? So it's kind of a lot of work, but it's really useful. But it was just an example. Let's see. If I get lost, please bring me back to it. About triads. Daniel, I learned major and minor triads on all strings. Are they useful on the big strings, or do you only use them on the first four? I use them all the time, everywhere. Guitarists, we sometimes fall into the trap of always playing these big chords. And sometimes it's just too much information, and too much of the same actually, because they're only playing the same strings, the same notes over and over. So triads are a good way to lighten it up. You can do, like Pat Martino, he had this... this is just a triad, major and minor. And the idea is to lighten it up and only play the the three notes of the triad. But now a good exercise is to actually be able to cover the whole fretboard with all inversions of a triad. So this is, again, what to practice. This is something great to practice. How? I'll show you. Why? Because it gives you a knowledge of the fretboard that breaks away from the linear knowledge. Right? When every note goes before or after another note. Like you need this C so you can get to this D. Not true, right? Of course, you can go anywhere you want. And so that's why we practice it. Now this informs the how, right? So the how would be, can I abstract and transcend the positional playing in favor of a more situational form, right? So if I have only the three notes of C major, now this is not immediately relatable to having studied the cage system or three notes per string or four notes per string or whatever. It's a new way of looking at it, but it also has a use, which is now you'll be able to play chords in a way that's new to you and to a lot of people, because a lot of people get stuck with this. So if I'm writing a song like In Dreams and I'm playing this, these are very simple chords. If I were to play this with regular chords, it's really basic stuff. But just by playing it like this, I'm getting this continuity between the forms, and the way I'm able to do it is because I see the notes for what they are, right? So going back to triads, one way to do it would be this. Okay, so we want to play a C major triad, which is C, E, and G only, and we want to play it everywhere. And so we start from the lowest possible option, which is G, C, E. There's nothing lower than this. I could play like this, but I'm trying to play all notes at the same time. So this is as low as it gets. There's no other option to play this. Then I would move to the next possible option for playing C, E, and G, so an inversion. And I play C, E, and G. And now, if I want to learn the architecture of the guitar and free myself up from standardized positional playing, I could say, well, is there any other way that I can play this? And of course, you can play down here. Same sound, right? Not the same notes, but the same actual sound. Except for the little difference in timbre, it's the same sound. If I keep going, I find this E, this G, and this C. And again, I wonder if I would be able to play this anywhere else. It's the same sound, but in different positions. And you can keep going, right? You can go to this G here, and now I find it in more positions still, and then down here. So you get all this position, and eventually you'll run out of frets down here, but you'll make up for it with the frets up here, and you go all the way to the fretboard. So now you see, I don't know if you've practiced it like this, but it's not a common way to practice it. But now you've learned the triads, and you can do it, of course, with major, minors, and so on. And this is only C major. You can do it in all keys. But then, as soon as you want a sound, right? Not a chord. You want a sound. You want the augmented sound. You can move it. You might wonder, why do I want that sound? Well, there's uses for it. You know, I picked a strange one, but you see, there's simple uses for it. But you can do just a minor sound, right? So I want a minor sound. How many possible ways do I have to create that sound, you know, for... Right? How many possible combinations do I know to create the sound? And one of them will be useful for whatever situation you're in. But it's not memorizing. You see, it's enabling your head to think fast about the architecture of the guitar. So that's how I would do it. Now, the way you would do it can be completely different, because your uses for it might be totally different. I write instrumental music. I like the stuff I like, and you might like different things. But that's what I would do. Now, the only people who I think could focus solely on technique, going back to, I think it was Alberto's question, it's if you're only a performer, right? If you're only playing music like in an orchestra or in a cover band and you have no intention of ever improvising or ever composing music, it's fine, it's legitimate, to just do that. But then you can just focus on the technical aspect and the expressive aspect. So you don't actually even have to know the fretboard. I had a student who was a very accomplished classical guitar player, and he could play concerts, full concerts, and he had zero competence, not in a bad way, but zero knowledge of basically nothing else about the guitar other than the performance aspect. So technique and the notes to read the partiture, but not even intervals, scale relations, and he was very competent at that specific thing. So if that's your thing, that's fine, but it's not my thing. So, and most people I think have this impulse of creating music. So I'm gonna go open up the window a little bit. It's getting hot. Just one sec. All right. So let me see if I was missing any other questions. Otherwise, we'll right hand. Okay, here it is, Alberto. Right hand maybe is more difficult than left. For me, follow the positions for the left hand is easy because I don't need to improvise. But what to do with the right? Okay, wait. For example, but what to do with the right? For example, playing chords. Yes, that's me. I pick a book and start to do all the exercises, but then I don't know how to put this technique in real music world. Well, because, okay, that's a good point. We all go through it sometimes, but you should see technique for what it is, right? And to make a trite example again, your technique is a hammer, right? You've heard that. And you can use the hammer to join, a couple of pieces of wood, but you wouldn't actually put a hammer between the two pieces. It's the same thing. So I would say stop doing technical exercises, right? Stop and just ask yourself, if you're in point A and you need to go to point B, how would that exercise or those exercises will help you get there? If you can't figure it out, it doesn't mean it's a bad exercise. It just means you're probably not ready to do that exercise because you won't be able to take advantage of it or full advantage. So why do it? Right? And maybe you should just pick another exercise, or maybe you should make one up. And maybe the first 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 exercises you make up they're not going to be any better than the ones from the book, but eventually you'll be able to find a connection between your current position, the current way of playing you have, and the one you want to get to. You see what I mean? And you have to go through that phase of feeling a bit lost, but you won't find, the solution to it by just simply collecting more things. And we mentioned it a few chats ago that most great musicians, all of them, they're great not in spite of, but because of their limitations. Because we all have tons of limitations. There's so much music and so much musical knowledge, and the frontier keeps moving. So you never know everything. We all know what we know, but the thing is, you have to, work within your framework, and your framework, by definition, includes limitations, it includes things you don't know. So unless you find an urge to fix a limitation you have, you shouldn't worry about it. Like, that's a problem with the YouTube thing, right? Because if you have to make 10 videos a week, you will talk about 10 things a week, and it will almost sound like you know what you're talking about. And if you're a really good YouTuber, which I'm not, obviously, judging by the numbers, but if you're a really good YouTuber, you'll know how to make it appear that you actually know all this stuff properly, right? And that you're able to improvise with it and to apply it and so on. But to the person who watches you, you start feeling, wow, I should know all this stuff. And there's so much stuff out there that you really think you have to know it all, and you don't. You don't have to know it all. So if a book has 150 exercises, the guy who wrote the book, he might not even be alive anymore, but certainly he doesn't know you. He doesn't know what it is you need. So eventually you need to become independent from the sources of information. And then you'll be able to enjoy them and to actually make them useful, right? Because if you know what you need, then books are a great, great, great resource. They're incredible because there's a lot of great minds, musical minds out there. So you can go and look for it, but you shouldn't know everything. So if your book has 100 exercises, find the one that today is good for you. And maybe in 6 months, there will be another exercise that is better for you than the one you did today. But you have to be able to, choose them properly. And the way to do it is to know exactly what it is you're trying to get out of them. Because otherwise, you'll be chasing your tail for a long time. You just practice and practice. And that's, as I was saying in the beginning, is the worst thing, because you see people actually putting in the hours and getting frustrated by the lack of improvement, right? So I had an idea today to show you a little something, but I wanted to do it live, and now I'm actually regretting it, because I don't know if I'll be able to. But what I do have here is Garageband for the iPad. Let's see, right? So just Garageband, very simple. And I put in a loop, a drum loop. That sounds like this. Can you hear it? I'll turn it around later, right? So, and here's how I would approach practicing scales if I were starting out, and even right now, if I'm doing something completely new, I would do something like this, right? Going back to the concept of everything I do and I learn, I apply to music as soon as possible. So these loops sound a bit weird because I want it to be as non-specific as possible, but okay, so I was going to record the bass in D, but there's a bass here. I'm just going to use whatever's here. I don't know what this is doing here. Okay, well then we'll just do a little pad on top. Okay, so we're gonna do that. We're gonna do that on top, okay? And I'm gonna tell you exactly what it is in a second. I know it sounds strange, but stay with me. Okay, check out that fill. Oh my god, that's terrible. All right, so what I have here, so we'll just do it in D. I don't know why there's a D recorded here, because I thought I just put a drum kit. But okay, so this is a D loop, right? And it's as non-specific as possible. This is just octaves of D, nothing else. Okay, so there's a little, can you hear, let me know, I'm gonna turn it around and you tell me if you can hear all the instruments, at least on the iPad, right? Then it's just three things, a little bass, drums, and there's a little pad. Let's see. Can you hear it? Okay, I'll wait for your answers. Yes, okay, great. So, wait, Danielle says, a useful way of applying exercises I found is to see YouTube guitar covers and try to imitate with the guitar. For example, also watching Andre playing is very, very useful. A lot of hints. All right, thanks. Yeah. Michael Jackson? Yeah, I wish. No, this is just a little dumb thing. But anyway, what I did is I gave myself a very clear rhythm. It's extremely basic. 1, 2, 3, 4. Literally. And then I have a bass that only does root notes, which is D. I don't know why, but it was there. Which is actually is a good choice. And then I just put a little something underneath, which is this pad, because the other thing is so rhythmic that I always want to keep in my mind, in my ear, the sound of the key. Okay. So why only one note? Well, because what I'm going to demonstrate today, or I will try to demonstrate, needs to be flexible and be able to be used in all kinds of different scales. So the only tying thing that I want is the root, which is D. If I were practicing something more specific, like if I were practicing only a C major scale, if I were only to practice C major, then I would probably put something a bit more complex, like a chord that specifies C major, but I want it to be as vague as possible, so I only have a D. And so here's what I would do, and I will go up a little bit level by level, and so it depends on where you're at. Hopefully you'll find something useful. Okay, so if I don't know much about guitar, maybe I actually started with C major, right? All natural notes, you know how it goes: C, D, E, F, G, A, B. But since we're in D, I'm gonna start with the simplest D scale, probably the simplest in the world, which is D Dorian. The reason D Dorian is so simple is that it's made up only of natural notes, just the same as C. And depending on what I want to practice, maybe what I need is to practice all my scales on one string. So maybe I'll start with that. Maybe I need to be able to move fluently horizontally on the neck and not be so tied up by positions. So I'm gonna start maybe practicing a little bit on one string. Let me know if you can't hear anything. And I will play D minor, D Dorian, C major on one string. Let me know if you can hear. And so I go, okay, well, first of all, where are all my notes? Okay, very simple. I'm just playing the Dorian. Now that's enough if I'm at the very beginning, but what if I say, okay, well, now I know the notes, but what is this D Dorian stuff? It's not enough for me to know that it's C major. I want to know what it is. So I studied and I find that D Dorian is a minor scale with a raised sixth. The sixth note of D is B. So I'm gonna focus on that sound. You hear it? This B. And that's not the right note, but it sounds good. So I can play like this. And as soon as possible, be conscious of that B. This B. The reason I'm making this technical stuff is that I can hear more notes if I play with the tapping, right? Because I can hear my root, my minor third, my Dorian note. Okay, so this is what I'm playing. And now I go like, okay, that's okay, but I don't want to play one string only, I want to play two strings. Okay, so I'm going back to it. Now, first of all, I'm only finding the right notes. That's enough for me now. I just want to know the notes. Okay, that's it. I'm done. Now I want to focus on the B and the D on two strings. Now I'm going further, you see, I get carried away, but now I'm worrying about the rhythm. Am I following the pulse? Am I taking advantage of the dips and valleys, of the rhythm? Am I making phrases that make sense? Am I conscious of what's number one, what's number two, the strong beats and the low beat? So I can start making melodies that are rhythm conscious. Then I become conscious of other things, like the D, the fourth string, it's an open D, so see, I'm taking advantage of all kinds of stuff. On the second string, I have a B, which is the Dorian note, right? So what if I... And now I want to play on all strings free, all positions. So slowly, I'm gonna work my way around the whole neck. Right, something like that. Okay, so now if you are more advanced, it becomes a bit harder because you hear stuff, and so in this sense, I was tied to the Dorian scale, and sometimes I dropped in a few notes that my ear was hearing, but I shouldn't have but it's only a couple. The rest was the Dorian. So that's one step, right? And I brought it to different levels, but I'm only working with natural notes. So why do I keep this loop so vague with only the root position? Well, let me see if there are more questions. Sorry, before I continue. Hello, Chamil. Hello. Let me know where you guys are from. I really enjoy, because I love traveling and now I can't. So I really enjoy talking to people from different places of the world. Let's see who else is here. You make sense of the exercises that I should be practicing. Best teacher ever. Well, thanks, Daniel. So, okay, so I kept it in D, and I didn't want to do anything else because here's what I'm gonna do now. Now, D Dorian has no flats or no sharps. It's only natural notes. From Galicia, Alberto. Wow, bonito, eh? Very good. Galicia is a wonderful region of Spain. Well, not region. People get mad. The translation, you know, it's a community. It's a territory actually. But anyway, I'm using only D, and so what I'm gonna do now, I can go to a scale that it's a little bit more complex. Okay, so but I don't want to go too far. So what I'm gonna do is I'm getting really hot. Let me strip for you guys. I'm going to find a scale that's just a little bit harder. So maybe I will go with the scale that has one flat, but it's still a D scale. And there's a D scale with one flat, which is D minor. So that's what I'm gonna do, just for a few seconds. And I go like this. Now the difference now is that I had a B before, now it's a B flat. I can apply to all string, and maybe I want to use it a lot. Or I want to ignore it. And only hit it when I'm ready to give you that information. See, so that's what I will practice. And then always with this loop, which doesn't have to stop, I go, okay, what's with one sharp? Do I have a D scale with one sharp? And I have mixolydian. So, okay, so I think what makes this mixolydian special? It's the flat 6, the flat 7. So it's this D, the C here. But otherwise, it's the same scale as Dorian. If you get lost by this, I won't get into all the modes right now, but you can find it anywhere. But Dorian is a minor scale with a sharp 6, and mixolydian is a major scale with a flat 7, which makes it, the only difference is one is major and one is minor. So now I'm going to combine them and try to figure out if I can work it into my ear so that I can use them better later. So I go from Dorian to mixolydian. Sorry. Dorian. To mixolydian. Okay? And then I can keep going. Do I want to make it harder? Well, then I go to, maybe go to D Phrygian, which is a great sound, and it has more flats. I'm going to move actually because I want to practice all over the neck. Now, if I get too static on one position, I start moving around the neck, right? I try to work whatever I need to work. Right? Use all the fretboard and so on. I could go on with crazy stuff. I could do tonal music. Or I can do modes of the harmonic minor. Right, this is Phrygian dominant. Do I want to play the regular harmonic minor? Do I want to play the alter scale? Now, you see why I only picked a D at the bottom, because all these scales have defining notes within them. And these notes are the notes that then define the chords for that scale. So if I put a specific chord, I would only be able to play whatever scales agree with the chord, okay? So if I played a C major chord as the basis for this little jam, I could only play major scale that had a scale that has a C, an E, and a G, which are the notes of the C major scale. So I could play C major, C Lydian, Mixolydian, Lydian dominant. There's a few of them, but then if I add one more note, if I add a seventh, so I do C, E, G, B, then my options every time they get more restricted. And the same is true if I use, instead of only one chord or one note, more notes, so like a progression. Because when I have a progression, then all the notes of the progression, of all the chords of the progression, will make the sum, the sum of them will be a more defined tonality. So if I play C major, I can play all the major scales, but if I have C major and then G major, the sum of these two chords will give me a very defined tonality. So I only have, with these two chords, I only can, of the regular scales and modes, I can only play two of them, see? So it gets more restricting. Look at this. This is how addicted I am. I already have 2 cups ready, so I don't have to get up and interrupt this stream. That's how much I love you guys, but also because I'm addicted, so I don't have to wait between one and the other. All right, so I hope you see what I did there with the thing. You can apply this to anything. You can actually, somebody, we were talking about the harmonization of a scale. What if I just want to practice harmonizing? And I'll play, maybe I want to play thirds, but in C major. So I can go. But I want to do it on these strings. Or now on the whole fretboard. You see what I mean? I can still do it. I can use this for anything, and I could actually do all this harmonization in all the possible scales. So this is the how probably, and the what I would practice, and the why would be because I want to make music and I don't want to be a warehouse of musical information. And I do study a lot of music because I enjoy it, but they're useless to me unless I can make music with them. So actually, as an example, there's a song on my album, Lights and Shadows. I don't mean to self-promote, but it is on that album. And it has this riff. Right? And this is a scale that I had a little book on world scales. And one day I brought it home and I opened it and I looked at the scale, and within 5 minutes, I wrote that riff, and I wrote a sequence of chords that sounded interesting to me, which was these two chords, which are minor, 1/2 step apart. And then there's, I think it was like this. Now it sounds dissonant, but it works with the song. Sorry, there. So it sounds strange, but to me it didn't sound too strange, and that meant that on top of it, I could impose over this strange chord progression a very simple rock scale. And so that theory goes on in my head really quickly, but the most important thing is not that, is that as soon as I have a new piece of information, I'll make something musical out of it. In this case, it worked out pretty well. Okay, let me see if there's more questions. I'm having fun today. Thanks, guys, for showing up and asking all these questions. By the way, these are all good questions, so I assume a lot of you guys are well versed in guitar and music. So I hope I don't sound, I don't think condescending, but I hope I'm not speaking below your level too much. If I am, let me know. I also don't want to go way, above the average, because I think a lot of people will watch this who are, at a regular, kind of at an intermediate level. So please don't get offended if I'm answering your questions in a simpler way than you're able to. And if you want me to speak, in more complex terms, let me know and I will, if I can, because I might not be able to. So Danielle, when you play, you think of scale shapes and also of the exact notes? Yes. The most important thing are the notes. I know all my notes everywhere, on all the fretboard, for every scale that I know, for every chord that I know all of it. And again, is it all of it? Well, it's all of it that I know. It's not all of music. I don't assume to know all of music, and I don't really care. Whenever I find a hole in my knowledge, if it's of interest to me, I'll fill it up. But within these terms, yes, I know all the notes, and I know all the notes that are available to me in a certain key or a certain scale, like all the scales we talked about before in D, and there's more. I know all of them. And usually, maybe this will help you, I set up all the things that I learn as far as scales, chords, arpeggios, that kind of stuff related to tonality. I try to study them in 3 ways. One way is horizontal, one way is vertical, and one way is mixed. And I try to have a good grasp of all of them. Of course, there are priorities. So if you're starting out, or if you're beginning to get into these, deep waters, I would say certainly major, minor scales with their modes. And I mean just the regular modes, not minor harmonic or melodic, just those two. So Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. Locrian is fine. But, the 6 main modes, and Locrian comes free. And then the pentatonics. I would certainly do that at this level. So I know how to play every scale on all strings, and I know how to improvise with them, with my own limitations, but I know how to work it without having this situation of playing only one string confine me too much. So I don't play like this. You see, this way I'm tied to the string. I'm trying to see the string as an instrument, so that it has its limitations, but I can also work around them. So if I don't like all these sliding sounds, I'll try to get rid of them. See, I'm trying to work around it. I can develop certain things that I might not see in position playing. I might incorporate 2 hands just to get me more mileage. That's one thing I always do with everything I learn. Arpeggios too, if I'm studying a new chord, I will look at it from the point of view of, sorry, I can't talk while I'm doing this. I'll do all my chords You know, if it's a diminished, I still try to work that way. And so that's one way. The other way is vertical. And when I started, there wasn't much information out there. There was no internet. And so I swear I don't remember how, but I ran into the cage system. So that was my first introduction to actual scales. I played for years without knowing anything. I played in a band, a pretty big band in northern Italy. We would play concerts, you know, for a lot of people sometimes, and I had no idea what I was doing. As a matter of fact, I used to play all the solos, right? And so the singer of the band, who's a great singer, great songwriter, we were just kids, you know, but he was great. And he would say, "Oh, today's solo was great. Can you just do it the same thing next time?" And I'm like, I wish I could. You know, I have no idea what I did, and I probably will never be able to do it again. And so that was my life for a long time. As a matter of fact, that gave rise to an anxiety problem I had when I was at somebody's house or in a store, and they said, "Wow, you're the guy in that band. Can you play something?" And I would freeze. I had no idea what to play. No idea at all. And so eventually, you know, the cage system kind of saved me from that, because I could try to find a way to codify, you know, the scales. So the cage system was a good vertical way of looking at it. But then when Goodrick came along, you know, Mick Goodrick, the Advancing Guitarist, that book, he has you play on 12 positions, which are one per fret. We won't get into that, but it's so, you know, that's all the vertical aspect, and that's what I do usually in the 12 positions. So 12 vertical ways of looking at it. And then I mix it. You know, I mix it up in all keys, all flats, all sharps. You know, I do all the 12 keys for every scale, the one that makes whatever more sense, you know. But I do all 12. And yeah, so the way I look at it, to answer your question in a very long-winded way, is that when I look at the guitar, I actually see all possible shapes, but not one by one. I actually see the whole fretboard. Like I don't see it as lights, but you can imagine, if just to explain it, if all the right notes lit up on the fretboard, but they also had their own names on it, and also the degree of whatever scale or musical situation I'm in. So this is not only, to me, it's a D, but it could be a sixth of whatever, you know, F Dorian or F major or whatever it is, you know, or some strange flat 9 of a C sharp alter scale. I don't care, you know, it's all there. So yeah, hopefully this helps. I know depending on your level, this might seem like a lot, but again, as we said at the beginning of today's video, you can just bring it all the way back, you know, to wherever you're at, and start building from there. You certainly don't need all this stuff to know all this stuff. I know it because I enjoy it, and also because of the kind of music I make. I need to be able to pull from different aspects, you know. But I did songs, as I was saying, before I even knew what the strings were tuned to certain notes. I had no idea of nothing. Very useful, thank you. Well, I'm glad this works. And also, the other thing, finally, the one of the great advantages of seeing the whole thing at the same time is to be able to play more notes at the same time, or riffs that are not based on specific chord shapes, because you just see all the possible options. So the intervals we were talking about before, you know, the 6th and the 7th, you can play all these intervals, and it will really help you to break out of the strict horizontal and vertical way of playing. This will really help you out, because it will free you up from the codified way of seeing things like this, and it will kind of put it in a circle, which is very useful too. I see music, I see all the notes not like that, but I see them like this, and that helps me, you know, move things. And finally, and we won't get into it today, but I will if you want to, there's a whole architecture of the guitar which can be explored, which will be extremely useful to free up your agility on the instrument. You know, you'll become very not only physically agile, but mentally. You'll be able to navigate quicker if you understand the architecture of the guitar and the structures. And you know, it's from very simple, like I learn a scale here and I can move it here, and it's the same scale, and it can go to it goes pretty deep, and I find it extremely interesting. But you know, it's a process. I don't know everything, and nobody does, I think, right? Except for Jeff Beck, maybe. You know. Okay, I need practice. Too much There are a lot of possibilities. Yes, yes. And as I said, YouTube doesn't help. I'm sure I don't help because it puts the focus on all the things you don't know. And because of the disconnect we might have, and this is a live chat, and this is the reason I'm enjoying it. But otherwise, if it were just a canned video, I have no way of knowing what your situation is. So I'm giving out all this knowledge that I have, but there's no way for you to be at the right spot to absorb it unless you're very lucky, and then it will only happen once. So yeah, so YouTube sometimes doesn't help, makes you think you need to know all this stuff. Okay, I use your view of guitar board already for the piano, but on guitar I have difficulty because the notes are all the way, yeah, they're all screwed up, right? That's what I was saying. Architecture of the guitar is really important. People call it, I call it architecture of the guitar, but some people call it the layout maybe, or fretboard knowledge. There are many ways to do it, and it's important sometimes to know what your current view of the instrument is, and then it's easier to find alternative ways of looking at it. But usually we all start from the same place, so most of us, we kind of get stuck into the boxes, the vertical boxes, and some people horizontally, but I haven't met many people who actually develop the guitar horizontally. I do it, as a matter of fact, as if it were 6 different instruments. So if somebody gave me an instrument, I would just play it on one string. That's it, no, nothing. And then I have 5 instruments of 2 strings, adjacent strings. So we'll get into it some other time. Maybe we can do a video on the architecture of the guitar, but it's going to be pretty deep. I don't know if you guys want me to do it. You get bored or something, I don't know. So I'm going to give you a minute or two to ask any more questions. Maybe we should just save them for next time. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope it wasn't too much. Was it too much information? I'll wait for your final comments. And if there's any more questions, we can use them next week. I'll be back next week, I'm pretty sure. So while I wait for your final comments, if you have any, thank you very much for showing up. I always enjoy talking to you guys. Some of you I've seen before, some of you are new. And I know there's many things you could be doing right now. So I'm very happy to see you here, and we'll do it again very soon. And if there's anything specific you want me to do, we will. I was thinking of starting something. We'll talk about it sometimes. But let's see. Sure, let's talk about something else next week. Thanks for all. Well, thank you, Danielle. You're welcome. Some ideas. You got some ideas, Alberto. I'm very happy for you. So thanks, everyone. I'll see you next week then. And if you have any questions, comments, feel free to use the comments below, and I'll keep them in mind for the next video. And if you want to tell your friends, I'm having a great time. So I'm hoping to be able to carry on with these videos for a while. So if you have friends, bring them over, and the more the merrier. So today I talked a lot, but next week I'll do more questions. All right. See you soon. Have a good weekend all. Bye-bye.